Welcome to the Purpose People podcast. Today I've got James O'Halloran from O'Halloran Coaching. Would that be the right thing to say?
Yeah. I mean, I have a business name, but I just refer to my, it's just trading as James O'Halloran, just me.
Yeah, no, cool. So great to have you on the sofa, and just to sort of like catch up with you around the aspects of purpose and why you do what you do. So did you always think you were going to be working for yourself?
Well, I don't know, actually, probably not. It took a while to get an experience of that, to kind of know that actually, this is what I want to do. I want to work for myself. My mum set up a catering business when I was 1, and she ran that from home. So I kind of had exposure to that.
Yeah, it's a bit of DNA of an entrepreneur there.
Yeah, definitely, yeah. Yeah, but when I left school, I was very much just following a conventional career path. And it took me a while to do something differently that kind of gave me the experience of working for myself and knowing how much I loved doing that versus asking for holidays or, just some of the strange things that happen.
Yeah, because I always joke that when I was a kid, it was like, well, if you want it, go and earn it. So we'd like to just take a bucket and a sponge and some washing up liquid and just wash a few cars, and then we'd come back with the thing that we wanted. It wasn't that our dad wouldn't buy stuff for us, but it wasn't like, well, you can make a contribution yourself, and you've got 2 hands and arms and legs or whatever, just go out there and make it happen. And I think for me it was like, well, if you want it, go and get it. There was that kind of thing drilled into us. And I think like for yourself, if that's entrepreneurship's in your DNA, I guess as you get older you start recognizing that you don't want to be like everybody else, I guess. Totally.
I mean, it's funny actually, my first business, which was not very official, was making fake IDs and selling them at school. Thinking back to that, I mean, I was a few years before I was 18. That's when that's where the market was, right?
Yeah,
it's quite funny. Do you know the first time we actually did it, I was working on it with a friend of mine. We had a really old computer with a dot matrix printer. That's what we were using. And we spelled college wrong. So it was like National Collage of Art and Design. But we just used to print it off and then color it in with like felt tip pens, and that's how I started making money.
Wow, there we go. I mean, it's funny. There was a thing at the weekend where Crystal Palace win the FA Cup, and they said congratulations winners, and they spelt winners with a triple N.
By mistake?
Yeah.
Oh my gosh, right?
So even at the top level, people make mistakes. But winning with 3 N's on there. It was Crystal Palace, they've won the FA Cup for the first time. Congratulations, 120-year history, and he spelt winners wrong. So
that's an error.
Going around the internet after the game. I was like, oh my gosh. So that happens to the best of us.
Yeah.
So you obviously then, you're obviously at school and you're doing the whole fake ID thing, and maybe you got an offshore account or whatever. But what were you thinking about career-wise at the time? What was the goal?
The first thing I wanted to do, actually, the first proper thing was probably, I don't know, maybe I was 12 or something. I wanted to be a tree surgeon because I loved climbing trees, and to think that actually I could make that my job, where I carry on climbing trees. And then I realized that, that job is actually cutting down the things that I love. So I was kind of like, conflict there. I did explore that career for a while when I was, probably, 14 or something like that. And I kind of moved away from that. But then the next thing that really took hold of me was becoming a furniture designer. And so...
Still messing with wood.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. Because when I grew up, we had 4 massive trees in my garden, which I used to climb. Yeah. And I just spent all my young years in there with my friends, building massive swings and playhouses and stuff. And nice. At one point, we had some nice furniture in my house growing up. And at one point, my dad said, "Do you know that it's them that made this?" And I was like, what? Trees, you can climb them, but you can also make amazing, beautiful objects. I wanted to design and make furniture. And when I was leaving school, I was really just fixed on that. There was one course in the whole of Ireland at the time that you could design and make bespoke furniture at a degree level. And I applied for that course. I did the kind of assessment where you bring your work beforehand. And I did really well at all of that. And then they actually reduced the course by half to 12 people. It was a really small course anyway. Wow. It was the most oversubscribed course with the least number of places at the time. It was like a lot of people wanted to go there. Really rural part of Ireland. And I didn't get in on that year when I left school. And so just randomly enough, it went from not doing that, which is all I really wanted to do, to doing software engineering, because it's all I'd put down on the form. My mum was like, I think you should have more on that, just in case you don't get the course that you want. So I put in a few other options, like software engineering being one of them. And by the time I got offered that place, I was like, actually, computers are pretty cool. Maybe I should do that. So I did a 4-year degree in software engineering instead.
Wow.
Yeah.
Bit different, eh?
Yeah, totally. And then when I left, I was trying to get a job as a programmer, and there was a bit of a recession at the time, and I didn't manage to get a job doing that. But my first proper job was as a business analyst. So I was working in a subsidiary of Nationwide Building Society here in the UK.
Right.
And I loved that job because I was just chatting to people.
Yeah.
And then really the job itself was to talk to people who are using software or using systems of any type, and then kind of report what it is that they needed or where they were getting stuck to software engineers. Mm-hmm. And so I'd bridge the gap between the two, and I just loved that. So I was gathering requirements, really. So this is a theme you'll see throughout my career.
Yeah.
Interacting with people, interviewing of some sort, and then kind of communicating what that was in ones and zeros on the other side.
You didn't think about, when you couldn't get in, of like going down the fake ID route to get in?
Well, just pretending I was somebody else.
And like someone else for a year.
Yes, I'm Barry.
I'm Barry. Yeah.
Fluffy hair.
Yeah.
I didn't.
No, so yeah.
I was so into it. I kind of thought, if I don't get that course, I'll go off and be an apprentice. Like, I'd get into furniture that way. And something changed in that summer, when I actually got offered the place. And my sister happened to go to the same university, and I was just like, actually, I know this is going to be good. I felt overwhelmed by choice that by the time it came to it, I was like, yeah, there's many other things I'm interested in. So this is one of them. Computers are one of them. And let's just see how that is. Yeah. And the course that I did, you kind of could do 2 years and get a certificate, 3 years get a diploma, and 4 years get a degree. So at any point I could kind of stop and then just, do something else. And, for the first while, I absolutely loved it. I loved like being able to tell the computer what to do, and just, actually programming AI 25 years ago was part of my course.
Wow. Look at that. Yeah. So, for me, it's like you've got this thing of working with people that becomes a bit of a theme already. You sort of start to identify that you enjoy working with people. So was it problem solving for them, or was it help, as in you find a solution for them, or was it helping them find the solution for themselves?
That's a good question. And actually the subtlety between the two, right? Like I've got something to offer because I understand how these systems work, but really that's, me deploying a solution on top of you is probably not going to help. Yeah. So really it was the subtlety of the two things, really listening. So back then, this is like 25 years ago almost, no, maybe 23 years ago or something. My opening gambit when I was talking to people who were really busy, they had a lot going on, a lot of processes and different things they're doing in their job. Why would they want to talk to me, taking an hour or two of their day? And the thing I used to say was like, listen, I want to make sure that you finish on time, at least on a Friday, so you can go home for the weekend. Yeah. So like, help me just understand where you're getting stuck so that we can hopefully find a way around that. Yeah, and then just sitting and observing and having a laugh with them, just helping them relax, because for some of these people it was they didn't want to talk to someone who was from a computer background. It just wasn't what they wanted. So finding a way of making them feel at ease, and just being really curious about what they were doing and where there might be opportunities for it to be improved. I mean, back then people were doing things like they'd get an information pack from a new customer of the business, and they would photocopy that 3 times and hand it to this department and that department and this department. I'm like, I think we might be able to do something here to save all of that paper and all of that hassle and time, and then double keying and getting it wrong. There was just so many areas where you could improve.
Which is interesting because, one of the things we were talking with slightly off camera was about education, because that was what frustrated my wife in education, where was this triple, quadruple entry stuff. And it was almost like the teachers spent more time doing that than actually teaching.
Yeah, it's a crime, isn't it? And the same in the NHS, nurses, and really, these people are good with people or with children or educating or caring, but then they're having to go back and fill out in all of these forms and use different systems. It's just such a crime. I mean, that's, yeah. I mean, there's loads of need.
You've got to think about it. At its core, admin is supposed to serve the person delivering the service. And what's happened is the admin is dictating how people deliver the service to the point that the admin becomes more important than the service that they're offering.
Yeah.
And I think, going back to software, for example, that's what software is supposed to do. So it's to make it as easy and as simple as possible for people to get on with what they want to get on with.
Yeah.
And so like from a user experience perspective, when you're building software, if you're having to work really hard to make it happen, it's a problem.
Yeah. And you'll find a way around it because innately we're kind of lazy and we're looking for like the most efficient way, right? So like if you're expected to fill in something in lots of different awkward ways, you're just not going to do it if you can get away with it, right? Because that's just not serving you.
A waste of time. Yeah. So you're working with people on a regular basis then, and you're working for somebody. So when did the itch come that, you know what, I enjoy this, but I wouldn't mind doing my own thing? When did that sort of happen?
Yeah, I mean, yeah. So I had a few other jobs. I actually worked in Silicon Valley as a programmer for a while, and I worked in a big organization doing project management in London. And it was in that organization that, it just, something wasn't working for me. I believe I was good at my job, but there was just a big conflict between, how I was doing it and how long things took to get signed off and trying to, enable people to work on the project. It was just a real challenge. So at that time, I put my hand up and I said, can I have a coach? I've heard of, this was back in 2007. I'd heard of executive coaching, I'd had swimming coaches when I was younger, water polo coaches, I was like, I wonder what it's like to have a coach in the workplace. It's kind of a strange concept, but, actually I'm kind of struggling, so I could really use some help. And I think they must have agreed because they said, you can have a coach. And so back in 2007, I had this really, really experienced, used to be an executive for Shell, and he had done a whole load of international work, and he became my coach, and I worked with him. And in that job that I was working in London at the time, I mean, he helped me realize who I was, what that company was like, how to influence people. Like he really helped me with aspects of my day-to-day job. But ultimately, I left that company because it just, culturally, it just didn't work for me. I think I was already much more entrepreneurial and kind of really driven and had a greater sense of urgency than that culture. And so, as a way of transitioning and leaving, I was coming back from, I'd been in Singapore on a holiday, and I was coming back and I was reading the newspaper, and there'd been this was in 2008, there had been this earthquake in China, and it was all over the front of this newspaper, this amazing picture. I'll never forget it. It was, it was quite zoomed out, and it was like a scene of devastation. And as I said, it was zoomed out. And as you kind of looked closer, there's all these little, almost like ants, which were people lining up to go in and help in this destruction. Like all these presumably Chinese people just walking in just to kind of lift, rubble and things out of the way. And I looked at that picture and I was thinking, I've just had an amazing holiday. I'm going back to work tomorrow morning. The classic kind of Sunday evening blues. I'm like, my life is just not meaningful enough. Like I don't want to go back to this job. Yeah. So I started that Monday just Googling like volunteering in London, like just all sorts of different things to try and find something more meaningful. Yeah. And I found my way to an organization called Rally International, who they take kind of people, young people and disadvantaged young people across to, in my case, we went to Costa Rica and Nicaragua, and they do expeditions there with them. So from the age of like 18 to 23, I think, are the young people. And as I said, some very disadvantaged young people were taken too. And then for 4 months, we do different expeditions with them, including building a school in a rainforest for people there. I mean, like it's the most incredible thing.
Yeah, amazing.
That was so when I was still working in that job, I found this opportunity, I applied for, got a place, and then I quit my job with nothing else to go to other than this 4-month opportunity, this experience. And when I came back from that, I was like, okay, and now what? I just didn't have a plan, knew I didn't want to do that job anymore. And so I started looking, I looked for a coach, and I started working with a coach again to try and help me figure out what was I going to do. And back then, this was maybe 2009, there was 2 things I was interested in. One was to train to become a yoga teacher, and the other thing was furniture, like I mentioned. Okay, yeah. And so I explored these with my coach, and And I ultimately decided, right, actually, you know what, like I wanted to do furniture, I wanted to make things out of wood, and I have made things out of wood since I was tiny. So I'm going to do that. And I did a 2-year training course, and I set up a business, which I ran for 4 years, which was designing bespoke, high-end wooden furniture.
Nice.
And that was the first time I'd started working for myself officially. Not in the kind of...
The experience, and you went through that journey then, and then I guess you know what business is like. It's not always easy, right?
Totally. And what I realized quite quickly, that although that had been a really kind of I had this real vision that I don't want to be a granddad kind of bouncing my grandson on my knee going, oh, what I wanted to do when I was young was do furniture, and you should really do what you want to do. You know, like I didn't want to be kind of incongruent with giving that advice. I was like, you know, I know what I want to do. I really need to go and do it.
Yeah.
But actually I realized through doing it that, you know, I would have had to spend over 80% of my time selling myself and, you know, marketing and stuff. And actually that's not really what I wanted to do. I wanted to be making things and working with people and understanding what they wanted.
Yeah.
Like the bespoke part. So it took me a few years, and I realized actually, you know, there's been so many aspects of doing furniture that I totally loved. And some of the things I made were amazing. And some of the people I worked with, incredible. But ultimately I didn't want to kind of be, you know, selling myself in that way and you know, oh, look at this table I've made, you know, do you know how difficult it was for me to, you know, that's just not who I am. So so I basically, there was a transition moment then at that stage. You know, the iPhone had come out and that was looking really interesting. So I kind of transitioned into that. What happened was I'd create a whole load of tools in my business for, you know, the furniture business to make life a bit easier, like just spreadsheets and different things. And I was getting more interested in technology again. I think I'd got a bit burnt out with technology. And but after being in the dusty world of woodwork, I'd kind of opened up to it again. And I heard about this hackathon happening in London, which was an accessibility hackathon. I was like, well, I used to do, you know, computer stuff. Maybe I have some value to add. So I turned up to that. And long story short, you know, there was like maybe 4 or 5 different charities had pitched problems that they had. And then there was, I forget how many people, there's a lot of people in the room. And the opportunity was to form a team and develop a solution for that charity over the weekend. Right. And so, I you know, being a chatty Irishman, I was able to form a team really quickly with, you know, quite a few geeky kind of nerdy programmers and designers. And we ended up turning an Android phone into a hearing aid for people with hearing loss over that weekend. And then we won the hackathon. We got like some funding for that, and I had a startup then. Wow. So that was kind of a transitional moment, getting back into tech and then really kind of stepping out as an entrepreneur.
I think the thing is that picture that you had, I think whether it was consciously or subconsciously, impact was at the heart of what you were doing.
Totally. And the thing is, if you had asked me when I was younger, I probably wouldn't have been able to tell you, but it was almost like a visceral kind of values thing, like looking at that Chinese newspaper, seeing those people walking in, comparing that to my life and being like, you know what, I'm a project manager, and maybe, you know, when you dilute it down, like someone's going to receive some value, but for me that wasn't direct enough. And then similarly, it took me a while to learn that lesson, because when I was making furniture, yes, I was making beautiful objects, and people were very pleased to have these beautiful objects in their home or in their business, but it still wasn't the same impact that I was looking for. No. And so not only did I not want to be spending 80% of my time in marketing, I also, it just felt like, you know, selling £3,000 coffee tables or £12,000 kneeling stools or whatever it was, you know, it just didn't feel like it was speaking to me in my core. And you're absolutely right. Like I was looking for something. I realized that my kind of mantra became figure out what you're good at and do that for the benefit of others. Yeah. So that's what I had been kind of doing, but without even realizing. Which
is interesting in the fact that that's what education needs to be, you know. And I think that's inherently when I talk about education, is that's not in there. It's almost like find out what you're good at, make as much money as possible, and that's it. You know, it's almost like the consideration that you, with your skills, talents, abilities, can impact other people is just not considered. It's like, no, what you need to do to be successful is get a decent job with a decent salary, and you can't get that unless you get a degree. And once you've got the degree, then you can get the house, the 2 cars, have the dog, get married, 3 kids, and then you're successful.
But it's kind of similar to what you talked about with education, and in terms of like the NHS, what I mentioned is like, it's like the things that you can measure are the things that, like, you know, get rewarded almost.
Yeah.
And so you can measure how many zeros are in your bank account, or how many, you know, like hundreds of thousands in your bank account. But you can't necessarily measure what it feels like when you've done a job that's really satisfying and meaningful and just speaks to your soul, or kind of, you know, just brings you that deep sense of satisfaction. You know, like that's a difficult thing to measure. So, bless you.
But I think you can measure it. So I would say you could measure the education system in how confident kids are.
Yeah, and I wish we did. Why don't we?
Yeah. So if you ask a child, how confident are you? I would say you'll be hard pushed to find the majority as an average around about 5 to 6, I reckon. They're insecure. They don't know too much about where the future is. Their interactions with people is average at best. They're more lean on introversion, not because introversion is a problem, but I think you've got a lot of extroverts that are introvert because they just don't know how they interact.
Yeah.
And so you can be confident introvert, by the way. What I'm trying to get to is that if you looked at a generation's confidence level, just in conversation, is the future going to be good? Generally speaking, their argument is no, and they transition super quick to victimhood. So it would be a case of, you know, what do you think is going to happen in the next 5 years? Well, you know, I don't know what's going on politically, and you know, we've got climate change, and the whole world's going to this, and you know, everyone's depressed, and my mental health and my anxiety is going through, and all of a sudden you're talking yourself into a place where you are not confident. And so for me, a healthy society is that find your skills, talents, abilities that only you know that you can do it, and you're brilliant at it, and then saying, how can I make the greatest impact with those skills, talents, and abilities? That person is going to have confidence.
I mean, this really speaks to something really potent for me, because when I was a kid, like I'm dyslexic. I was diagnosed when I was 8. Like I only learned to spell my own surname when I was 10. Like
I'm struggling to say it.
Fair enough.
Yeah, it's funny.
I mean, you're not the first. I don't think you'll be the last. But I mean, so like I feel your pain, because I couldn't spell it. But I mean, so my parents got a hugely valuable piece of advice when I was around that age, like 10 years old, and it was this lady who used to work in a remedial way with the kids and knew about dyslexia, which a lot of people didn't back then. And she said, just get them good at something, anything. Yeah. And the whole idea that, you know, like a rising tide lifts all boats. Yeah. So if you're good in some area of life, your confidence is available in other areas of life, which is how I work now as a coach. But, you know, and so back then my dad really took that seriously, and he was like, we're going to do swimming. And so it was something that I could physically be good at, and like it didn't require any academics, you know, and I could just apply myself, and I got good at swimming. And then so by the time I got to secondary school, because primary school was pretty miserable for me, but by the time I got to secondary school, I knew, like my dad used to say, like, you know, there's 565 kids in that school. You're probably able to outswim any of them, even though you're the youngest in the whole school. Yeah. And he was probably right. Like, the amount I was training, it would have been fair to say that. And I think just knowing that, even though I never told anyone, but like even just knowing that inside, like that sense of, gosh, I'm pretty good at something is important.
But I think that's ultimately what coaching is. So coaching is effectively 2 things. One is finding clarity, and then 2 is the confidence to make those decisions. And what I'm saying is, you know, you had the foresight to ask for a coach, but that role needs to be played in people's lives a lot earlier in the education system.
Yeah. Oh gosh, that would change things if we had the idea massively. Of coaching at school like that.
Can you imagine?
Yeah, I can easily imagine. It would be amazing.
Because people would leave going, well, yeah, okay, I'm not great at maths. This is not my strong suit, but this person is a phenomenally gifted communicator.
Yeah.
Right. Where can we make him fit? Because the 2 things here goes, they're phenomenally gifted a communicator. Which subject should I put them in? That answers its own question, because there's people with skills, talents, abilities, and you're trying to jam them into things to fit rather than Did you thought about getting into politics?
Yeah, just the creativity of just holding that. Yeah. Like something I often talk about in my work. Like, so we're getting more into a conversation about coaching specifically.
Yeah, that's fine.
But I often give this story. So like when I was trying to figure out what I wanted to do, like, which happens quite frequently for me and did do across my life, I kind of meet these junction points. I'm like, oh God, like this one isn't working out. Try something else, which was true of the startup business, which I can get back to. But yeah, I had this kind of vision of people working as a postman. I don't know why. It just really struck me, maybe more in Ireland where, you know, it's the same here in the UK, but they seem to have a lot of autonomy. You know, they're out by themselves delivering mail. They're outside. They're walking. It's active, like it's not involving computer or. And in Ireland in particular, like they often have a good conversation with you at the doorstep. So it kind of involves this conversation. And I often bring this up in coaching because I had that kind of idea bubble up into the top of my head. It didn't really make any sense, and I didn't become a postman. I don't even remember even looking into it, but it just stuck there. And much later, what do I do now? I'm outside. I own my own time. I meet people for good conversations, and I'm, you know, often, you know, in nature. Yeah. And it kind of like, if you just substitute like postman for what I do now, it's almost a direct fit with more things that I'm actually good at and I like doing in the mix. And if you had tried to hold those particular things and fit them into a box, I would have become a postman, which might have been absolutely fine, but there was much more like opportunity for me than that.
But I guess the role you're playing now is more grandiose than the postman itself. You're the sorting office because you're trying to find out where they need to go.
Yeah,
if you look at it subconsciously,
it's like all the letters in my bag are like not addressed.
So you get the letter, you sit down and say, right, this needs to go to that place over there, and you send them out. You know, to go to where they need to have the greatest level of impact.
It's funny actually, because there's all sorts of different types of coaching, but you've hit the nail on the head in terms of the type of coaching I like doing, which is really I'm sitting opposite someone or walking beside someone or however it is, and I'm really, in the back of my head, it's like, if I could fit a whole team around this person,
that's it.
What exactly would I have that person doing in the center of this universe? Like what are the processes, what's the ins and the outs that make this person do the thing that they're naturally innately talented at and love doing? And don't get me wrong, you know, I think the reality of life is that you're probably not going to love every moment of every second of every day, you know, doing the thing that you're doing. But if you can do that 80% of the time, which is a lot more than most people, I think, these days, then you're on to a winner. Yeah,
I mean, you're likely to forgive the 4s and the 5s in terms of a day if you know you're progressing towards something that you believe in, right? So, you know, you're not invariably, how was your day every day at an 8? I don't care, even if you've got £1 billion in the bank, it's still not going to be an 8. Your super yacht might not be working, or, you know, or they've run out of your favorite thing. Do you know what I mean? You will find something that frustrates you. You won't have a perfect day every day. But my point is, if you can help someone discover what their ideal 10 would be, and then they hit that a little bit more often than normal because they're enjoying what they're doing rather than hating it, then surely, you know, if you can turn the dial up that a 5 or a 6 is more consistent than a 2 and a 3, you've already made a bit of an impact.
Yeah, and often, you know, I work with a whole range of people. Mostly I work with founders and entrepreneurs, but then I also work with people who are kind of navigating their career and trying to find like more suitable roles for themselves. But in terms of founders and entrepreneurs, often when they come to me, they feel really off balance and out of kilter. Yeah. And often, so they might be scoring their average day at a 2 at that stage. But really, it doesn't take much to get them back into a place of balance. And then it doesn't take much again to get them into a place of power. Yeah. Because, you know, just kind of having someone there sitting and listening to what's going on in their life, reflecting back what you're hearing, maybe asking a few insightful questions, helping them, you know, cultivate a different strategy and multiple strategies, like one for their business, one different ones for their life, their health, and then helping them get on to that. You know, that it doesn't take long really to kind of, because you can feel really off center, but as I said, like just a few steps back into the middle and then you're flowing again. Yeah, and I think it's interesting, again, using your example. So you've got this tech company that's now benefit the hard of hearing, so to speak. Yeah. And that ran for what, 4 years, you said? No, that was the furniture. So the startup was probably closer to 2, although it's fits and starts, but yeah. So you got the startup, you're doing the hearing. Now you make joining the dots between a business that you are running and you're making an impact. Yeah.
So what happened after that then?
I mean, it's really interesting because although we solved that problem and we did turn an Android phone into a hearing aid that actually worked, and with some of the people we tested it on who were profoundly hard of hearing, they found it better than their actual hearing aids that were given to them. Wow. You know, like £8,000 hearing aids, just because there was kind of unique things about the way we did it. But you did have to have headphones on to be able to hear. Yeah. And because you had to have headphones on, the market, the people we were trying to, ideally sell it to in the UK, there's so much vanity around a hearing loss that people didn't want to have like wires or even headphones on, which I completely understand. Yeah. And at the same time, if they wanted to, they could go to the NHS and get a good set of headphones, but they weren't really looking to solve the problem. Yeah. And really what our business model was, we wanted to do like a Tom's kind of like Tom's shoes, like 1 for 1. So we were looking to make sales and kind of get money coming in the UK or in a developed country where we could sell it for a premium to then be able to bring the solution to Africa and developed countries. Yep. So that's what we were looking to do. Okay. But because we've got an NHS in this country, if someone actually wants to solve their hearing loss problem, they just go to the doctor and they can get that solved for free. Yeah. So we would have had to go to another country, maybe Ireland, where we don't have an NHS. And that was just all becoming too much. And, so for various reasons, we didn't kind of have the success or the impacts that we really wanted to. But in the time, we did have funding. So in the time, while I was recruiting for the startup, and I met a chap who I thought would fit in well for the role that we had. And it was like an informal kind of coffee chat, but really I was interviewing him. And by the end of the hour, I'd already decided, he wasn't right, and I explained. I said, "Actually, you're not the right fit for us." And he said, "Oh yeah, but this is really helpful. Could we meet again?" And I was like, "Well, I've got a young startup and a young baby, and I don't have a lot of time. And I'll see you at the next networking thing. Good luck." And he was like, "No, this is really valuable. Can we sit down and have coffee again?" And it was slightly creepy because I was like, "This is quite." But I said, "Why is it so valuable?" And he said, "Well, the questions you've been asking me have just really, really helped me because as I've been answering them, it's helping me understand where I want to be in my life." So I was like, I've received a lot of coaching. Maybe I've been accidentally coaching you. I don't know. And he said, "Well, whatever you're doing, I'm happy to pay. So can we meet again?" So,
wow.
So he was offering me money. And at the same time, yes, we had money in the startup, but we had no customers coming in. So on one side of my life, kind of tanking. On the other side of my life, someone's offering to pay me to sit down and have coffee with them. I'm like, "I'll take your money. Yeah, that's fine." And I had some experience of receiving coaching, and I explained I'm not trained and all the rest. And he was like, "Don't care." So I met him for 6 sessions, charged him some money, and I just loved it. I mean, I would never have seen that coming. I couldn't have identified myself as a coach. I just thought I was for bigger and better things. I don't know. It just, it didn't seem right. But, in the preparation before meeting him, trying to think about who he was and how I could kind of help unlock that for him, not tell him, but ask him a question that it would kind of open his mind. So in the preparation, in the time I spent with him, I was just so present. I mean, I feel like, in the room we were in, the ceiling could have fallen in. I wouldn't have noticed. It was just
engaged in that.
Totally.
100%.
And then afterwards, when I was writing up my notes, I was just so merrily at my computer, what did he say again?
But then that's the point, right? You're writing those notes. It doesn't feel like admin.
No.
It feels like what you're writing down is helping you advance.
That's it. It's part of my creative process. It's in certain areas of life, I don't have a great memory, but I wanted to make sure I was keeping on the pulse with some of the important things that he had to say, more for him than for me, because the way I work as a coach is much more about energy than remembering what people have said. I'm really in tune with how they're expressing things, not necessarily what they're saying.
Yeah, of course.
So, but I'm kind of making notes because it's helpful to be able to use his language in the conversation. So, and that never felt like a chore. Even to this day, like 10 years later, I'm doing the same thing. I still write my notes. I could use AI, I could use other things, but I'm like, no. And I'd spent quite a long time on that.
I think writing's underrated for that very reason. When we're writing for admin, it's like, but when you're writing to process, that was one of the things that really switched me on to blogging was a great way of micro reflection on my wins because I don't focus on wins. So like, if I didn't write, I wouldn't even think about it, right? I'd just be on to the next thing that needs to solve.
It slows you down and kind of makes you go over it again and brings it to,
so this
life.
Lets me to go, what have you been up to? Where you been going? And then you're like, oh, okay, yeah. You know, it's just that it helps you decompress in a sense of all those unanswered questions and think, that's tick, that's tick, that's tick, that's tick. That. Now you have brain space and capacity for what the next thing is. And I think that reflection piece of having to write a blog, and I still write a blog. I mean, I've been traveling, but I'm trying to get back in that habit of once a week. But I've been doing it for 10 years now.
Do you have the same structure that you kind of almost like fill in the blanks, or is it like when you come at it?
So there's definitely a structure to blogging if you're, you know, trying to communicate a product or service. But I think as I've got more and more experience, I think it's a DNA in me, and I'm always thinking, well, what can I leave someone with a value? But there's that kind of like, I use it like these 5 things, to be honest. So the first thing is the approach. So what is it that, how have I approached this last month, this last week, or the project that I was involved with, or the thought? What's the approach? So, you know, being more purposeful could be the approach. Well, tell me about that. What does more purposeful mean? Then I knitted to what they call is the birth of need. So it's a case of understanding, why would someone listen to me? What is their pain? So here's my approach, and how is that approach going to benefit someone with a problem? So I'm telling your approach, but then by having the birth of need written there, so I'd say something like, so you may think that you haven't got enough time. You're always playing catch up. You know, you feel like every day you wake up, you're running 25 minutes behind schedule. Well, the fix to that could be wake up earlier or go to bed earlier. I don't give that away immediately, but I'm just creating that empathy piece. So the birth of need is, I understand you. I understand what you're going through. You're trying to build a business. There's so many demands on you. Where do you get time to think? Then comes the presentation of the product. So it's not always buy a website or buy a coaching course or do this. It's what is going to impact you. So you would go, well, in the essence of this, one of the things you could do is, you know, get a journal, buy a book, get a pen or whatever, and spend some time journaling by waking up earlier in the morning, writing down your thoughts, deciding what you want out of the day, folding it up and put it on the side. Okay, and then before you go to bed at night, you open that back up and you see, did you achieve those 3 things? So that's the presentation of the product. And then I'd talk about people that I've already interacted with on a similar thing. So we call that deal with concerns. So it's like a testimonial. But so I remember when I was working with X, Y, and Z, and they had this problem, and we did this, and this is the benefits, and now they're in this place. And then the last thing is what we call closure, is, well, what do I want them to do? Check my website out, like and subscribe or whatever. So that approach, birth of need, presentation of the product, deal with concerns, and closure is inherently in me because I've been doing it for years. So I don't even think about it now. So if you look at any of my blogs, you'll see that flow, but it's more subconscious as opposed to headline answer. And I think if you write something around that, there is that benefit, there's that, this is the way I do my life. This is how I understand what you're going through. This is how I can help solve that challenge. Here's some other people that have solved it as well, and here's how to get in touch. And that could be used for software, that could be used for coaching, that could be used for leadership things, it could be used for branding, marketing, content, or whatever. That's how I write my blogs. But what it does for me is, when I'm spending that place of empathy, I'm reminded of why I'm doing it.
Nice. Yeah, I guess it always, that framework always keeps it relevant to the reader, right?
Yeah, 100%. Because I think you can read some stuff and then just it goes, and where's the conclusion? It's all right to have a thought, but to explain it. But for me, it's like, I'm all about purpose. So all roads lead back to it. So are you on purpose? Are you fulfilled in purpose, or have you lost direction of purpose? Are you 1 or 2 degrees out, for example? You know, it's and then also helping people not to forget where they come from. You know, you've had a measure of success for 18 months you run this, but you might have had a bad month. But in the context, that's month 19. 18 months have been brilliant.
Yeah.
You know, it's just to give people some context. Say, hey, I've been there. You know, I've been it where it's like there's a few unresolved things, and often it's just miscommunication. And it's like, all I'm feeling doing is seem like I'm repeating myself. But eventually you get there, and everyone moves on. It's not because you're a bad communicator. It's just maybe where everyone's at. You know,
taking it too personally, maybe.
Yeah, exactly. So that sort of like flow and that writing allows me to process, to reflect, and then I'm more present in the moment, as in today, and then because I'm a futurist, so that pulls me back into the present. Because, you know, given undisciplined Darrell, I'll be building the next great thing into for 10 years time rather than focusing on now.
Yeah. Oh yeah, I'm a futurist too. It's a huge gift, but it's also a challenge to stay present, isn't it? Yeah. Because
you're always, and I think that, and the challenge to stay present, because the key symptom is you never celebrate your wins.
Yeah.
Because you haven't won.
Exactly. Or there's a strong part inside that's like, not good enough, or move on. Or,
I'm not there yet.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
I'm
wherever there might be, that is undefined, right?
Yeah,
but it's just some sense of like, you know, it's not now.
Yeah. I know when I get there, you know, and it's like, I know I'm going up, I know where I'm going, but I'm not there yet, you know. And I think for me, that's often a futurist's problem, is that, so the writing pulls me back into the present.
Nice. Yeah.
Slows me down.
Yeah.
Digest what I've done over the last couple of weeks. Oh, okay.
Yeah, I think celebration is a huge, like, you know, something that we don't naturally do. Like a lot of entrepreneurs, you know, it's just, again, on to the next thing. It's just this kind of forward-leaning momentum. Yeah. But actually stopping regularly and being like, actually, things are pretty good. You know, things are, you know, nice right now. Or just, you know, being able to kind of take that moment. And that's an important part of the way I coach as well. Because I'm seeing my clients maybe every week, maybe every month, depends on the person. But, you know, there's a kind of a regular, you know, frequency and cadence where they're, you know, celebrating what's going on just by virtue of updating me and what's going on, and me kind of just acknowledging, gosh.
Because it might be the only person they've managed to communicate it to.
Often it is, because, you know, like everyone else is biased, really. Yeah. You know, and not in a really, you know, awful way, but just in an unconscious way. Like if you speak to your, you know, co-founders, they're going to just have a different angle for where they might want you to be operating. Or if you speak to your, you know, your husband, to your wife, or, you know, your family, you know, they're all going to have different concerns that are projected onto you. They might want to see you more. They might want more money. They might, you know, different things come into the mix. Whereas you work with somebody independent, I don't have those things. No. I'm not, you know, just, you know, we turn up, we do the work, you go, and, you know, I get paid, and that's that. So
you've been doing it for 10 years. You did. Can you share any like success or breakthroughs? You know, you don't have to give names and addresses or whatever, but any any breakthroughs where someone came to you somewhere and then they've got a bit of clarity and they've had the confidence to go and do what they want to do. Yeah, I mean, to be honest, the way I often say you should measure coaching, certainly with me, and I think it's true. I think it's true for therapy as well, is that every session should be valuable to you. I think in just to be clear, in terms of therapy, like often people are doing that weekly. So I think it's possible that you can go for 3 or 4 sessions without it maybe feeling valuable, because you might be working on something really sensitive and difficult and hard. But I think in terms of coaching, every session should be valuable, every session. Yeah. And so by virtue of that, if a client is continuing to come back to me every time they've met me, they've felt the value, you know, the benefit of it. And so, to give some examples, I mean, quite a long time ago when I began in this career, I was working with someone at a travel business, and it turned out, just almost like an accidental remark, that his company was quite a small company at the time. They had something like 20 holiday days a year. But this is a travel company, and he was recruiting people who loved travel, and they were selling travel, and, you know, it was just, that was who they were through and through. They loved adventure travel. And I kind of called him out on it. I'm like, what? You give 20 holiday days a year, but yet you're a travel company. And anyway, the next time I met him, which was a month later, they were on something like 25 or something, you know, and it's like, as I said, maybe there was 12 people in the company at this stage, and there's a lot more there now. But, you know, just that one kind of almost like sideways conversation, you know, like just a small challenge,
And he kind of reevaluated and was like, you know what, you're right. Like, and I think I recommended the book, Yvon Chouinard's book, Let My People Go Surfing.
Okay.
Because Let My People Go Surfing is the title of the book. He's talking about his employees.
Yeah.
He's like, well, if the surf is in, what are you doing at work? that kind of idea. Get out and enjoy what you love doing.
Enough, when I had the 4-day work week, which is, I put that into place back in 2019. So I was one of the first people to do it. And it was on the BBC website. It still is now. And it says, boss gives their team Fridays off to surf or something like that. So they've used the surfing analogy in there because obviously we've got a thing called Making Waves. That's our brand message and stuff like that. And it's about riding the wave and getting out there. And they use surfing in there. So they've probably read that book. Now you're saying, I'm joining the dots. And that's probably why they framed it as they did.
It is a great book. Yeah. But again, it's a bit like, Google with 20% time. It's not the same thing because they're still, expected to work. Or at least I'm not up to date on that scheme, but where 20%, like let's say a Friday, you're allowed and supported and encouraged to work on, any sort of projects that you might have in your mind and, assimilate a team. And some of the greatest innovations at Google have come from that.
The map, Google Maps came out of it, as far as I'm aware, and so did Gmail came out of that time.
Wow.
So you look at that and you go, wow. And that's what we do in our team. We have a balance. So we have 4 days. Mm-hmm. So they work Monday to Thursday. Friday is like Friday's day off. And then the following week is an R&D day.
Right, okay.
So we got it on a 2-week cycle.
Yeah.
So the idea is that on the R&D day, they're doing stuff that we wouldn't normally have time to do, but now you have time to do. If you need to go surfing to figure that out, then fine. It gives you time to figure stuff out because life is busy enough and you don't have the time to think and say, well, there you go, there's a day, just go and that program that you need to learn, go and play with it. It's not on anyone else's time except just go and do it.
That's great. Oh, look at them. I mean, to come back to your question though, like it often happens that clients, when they come to me, like I mentioned, they might be just a bit burnt out or something's not flowing. And actually it might be the first few months of working together, are really trying to shore up their work life so that they can take some meaningful downtime or just kind of change the pace so they can kind of get it into a better place. So like, supporting them with maybe delegation or getting more support in so they can step back and maybe they need 3 months off, which is outlandish to some people, but it might be really what they're craving and to travel with their family when they're still young and these sorts of things. So there's all sorts of, those examples are the ones that internally I'm kind of high-fiving myself because that's for me, that's a very meaningful impact where it might be one family system that's seeing the benefits, but everyone's benefiting sometimes when the founder of the company is away because they if they're really applying a lot of pressure, like it can be a kind of just catch up with ourselves. Breathe
but that's an interesting thing is that that by talking to them, I think I talk about it with entrepreneurs and business owners, they don't necessarily have the people to talk to. And often if it's their team, it then puts them under pressure rather than makes them feel good about life. Whereas if they've got like a coach, which is, 100% why you need one, is that you could talk about where you are at personally and someone can go, I don't care what you're saying. You need a week off and you can have it. Oh, but no, you need to take it.
Yeah, and we work through all the
exactly.
To actually like negate all of those things. And it might take a little while before they can get to it. And initially it might be just the seed of an idea. And then all of a sudden they're coming back to me going, oh yeah, I've been looking and I've been, we might go to do a safari or, whatever it is. And it gets exciting then. And then they really want to make it happen. And then it can be the beginning of a conversation about introducing much more balance into their everyday life rather than, because like life is a series of sprints rather than a marathon. I think it's better to look at it that way. It's like, there's a cadence and you can structure things that way.
As a software guy, you get it.
Yeah, totally. Yeah.
But it's true, isn't it?
But people work very well in sprints, like
absolutely.
Software, yeah?
That's it. But that's what I'm saying. There's some principles that we do and we don't take them and then apply them to our life. And actually they work really well. Yeah. And I think that, that thing with software, if you apply that to your life, it's almost like you give yourself, right, now's rest time. Now you've worked really hard. Now decompress. That's part of it. It's like a football team playing all the games for all the season and not having a break. well, you need the break to give your body the chance to rest, because chances are you're going to get to December of the following season and be injured for a year. So you physically have to stop at some point.
But it is really difficult to the performance mindset, isn't it? To actually be like, what? Like, I'm training as hard as I can because I'm in the Olympics or whatever it is. What do you mean take time off? That's crazy. You know, because to that part inside that's just like so driven, it's really difficult to break through.
Well, you feel guilty.
Yeah.
You know, like, I sometimes, if I'd say like, right, I've had 3 appointments in the morning, I'm tired, you know what, I've been traveling there, I'm just going to take the afternoon off. I'll probably spend like 2 hours of that afternoon feeling guilty that I've taken 2 hours off and I better do some emails. You say it, but the actions don't line up, right? Because you're like, well, just stop. And sometimes like Claire would just go, my wife would just say, just go, just get out.
Yeah.
And we do something menial, like drive the car and wash it, or you go out for a coffee where your phone's not around, or do something. Because I think the best thing I did was move from the city into the country, because it forced me to sort of switch off. And the thing is, when I stop talking, it's quiet. Like everywhere around us is quiet. And it's learning that I can unplug from all this technology, all these emails, all these Teams or whatever, and go for a walk. And it forces me to be present in the present, because now this is life. And life will carry on whether you're answering the phone or not answering the phone.
Yeah.
And there is another aspect to life, which is I have another role other than an entrepreneur, a husband, a father, a son. And sometimes we can get so swallowed up with the identity we have in the business that we forget about all those other things.
Yeah.
So it's a hard balance. I mean, for the benefits of the tape, my daughter's 18 tomorrow. So I had the opportunity to go to London to film. I can't. It's my daughter's 18th.
Good.
I've got to prioritise that. That out of all my appointments, that's number one. That's my day for tomorrow.
But even that, communicates so much about who you are and where you place your values, right? And your loyalty. So like, making that decision and, like some people getting to hear about it, just, it helps us understand what type of person you are. And we want to work with you.
I don't want it to be in the trauma counselling session. It's my 18th birthday. And he didn't turn up. He went to London. But I think the thing is that being responsible and being a people person it's understanding how you can help. As much as for you're a father, you want to be there 100%. But it's like doing the right thing. It's the right thing.
Exactly. And I think, it just reminded me in terms of the way I work. So most of my work is one-to-one. I do work with teams and...
but I'm guessing you enjoyed the one-to-one more than anything.
Actually, I mean, I like both, but they're very different, and I do more one-to-one. That's kind of, I suppose, my sweet spot, my bread and butter. And I think in that space, what I'm really trying to do, some of my clients work with me for years, and really what I've found that I'm doing is I'm kind of covering all the space that they're not. So it's not to say that I'm, brilliant at marketing, but I understand the principles of marketing. Yeah. So if they're talking about creating a new product and they're so excited about the new product and they're not really giving any thought to how they're going to get the world to know about this product, I'm going to ask that question.
Good.
But if they're really into marketing and they haven't really kind of given that much care to the product, I'm going to ask about the product.
Yeah.
So I feel like I'm kind of like just moving around trying to catch bits that are important and play them back in.
Yeah.
But in terms of team stuff, I mean, working, whether it's with, two co-founders or whether it's with a whole kind of senior management team or something like that on an away day or some sort of team development, I absolutely adore that, because it becomes really challenging for me, because you're also working with the dynamic. You're not just working with one person, which, you can read fairly well, but you're kind of working with the interaction, the glue that's invisible within the room. And that's really interesting. And often I do that, I kind of bring in some tools to talk about people's strengths. And so when you start talking about that, it's just like, oh gosh, I didn't realize you were able to do that. As they see their colleague kind of strong in something. And often I use a facilitation tool called Lego Series Play. Have you come across this?
Yeah, I've heard it. I think I did a Lego session I think I was like I was part of a sort of peer-to-peer group. And I think we had someone
facilitate
it. Yeah, I enjoyed it. It was great.
So yeah, I mean, when I'm working with teams, I tend to make it pretty dynamic. And I mean, Lego Series Play is an amazing tool. Basically, you have a big, exciting kind of collection of Lego pieces, and you, as a facilitator, you would design the session beforehand, but you basically pose questions, and then each individual builds their own reply in maybe 3 minutes. So you don't have very long to build a reply, and then you go around each person and you get them to talk about what they've built. So at the beginning, you might, to warm them up, you might ask a question like, build what it's like to have a bad boss. So they might build like a little mini figure in a like cave or something.
Yeah.
But then later you can start, tackling much more interesting questions that relate to the work.
Yeah.
And then you can, have people building solutions to challenges that they have in their workplace. So like you can really escalate up.
Yeah.
And it becomes much more dynamic, and you can test scenarios and all sorts of stuff. So for me, when you get people together who are, everyone's so smart and bright anyway, so you just kind of give them something that enables them to work well together.
Yeah,
it's great. Yeah, I love it.
No, I think there was even a thing at the end. There was like there was a scenario as well, and then we had to build our way out of the scenario, which is quite cool as well. So it was, because I always use this analogy. It was like, for me, using Lego as a kid, I played it by telling stories using it. So when you go back to your skills, talents and abilities, I recognized early on that I love storytelling. So I wasn't just playing with the Lego to build it. I was playing with the Lego to build something for my set of my story, whatever it may have been. And now I work in brand and marketing and tell stories all day.
It's all there, isn't it?
It's all there, right?
Yeah. I mean, this is something I'm so passionate about. There's an amazing book called Strengths-Based Parenting.
Okay.
It's an absolutely brilliant book. It really, it has a model in there of like, people's strengths, which adults can use as well. It actually gives you access to a particular psychometric tool that you can use as the parent. But then also, even for very, very young children, even like 2 or 3 year olds, there's a model of 10 different strengths and a small write up. So you can kind of look at the kid and just read this and be like, gosh, yeah, they're really competitive, aren't they?
Yeah, that's it.
And just see this, and then you can nurture that. Like if you've got a kid who's just naturally competitive, which I do, working with that, like supporting that, so that that's coming out. He's able to kind of explore that.
But what I like about that is it not only educates the child, which obviously it does, but it educates the parents as well. Because I think sometimes those traits, leadership, it's like they're not fully formed to understand when to push and when to pull. Oh, well, he's bullying. No, he's not bullying. He knows where he wants to go, and he wants to take as many people with him, and someone's not conforming.
Yeah.
And we need to help them with that. But can you not see leadership there? And I think it's a way of framing and understanding and shaping and molding, and we don't have the time to do it. So oh, well, this person can't sit still for 2 minutes, right? They got ADHD and let's give them a load of pills. Well, maybe that's not the case. Maybe actually they've got a lot of energy and you need to take and apply it somewhere else rather than keep them locked in a box, if you like.
Yeah.
Maybe they're amazing at sport and they just naturally need to go and run. Those are the sorts of things that I love to see with education. And at the moment, I can only control what I control, which is my immediate family, which is why we homeschool. But like in the midst of that journey, my son, for example, he's emerged, he wants to get into politics. And when we reflect, we go, well, he talks to everybody, like all the time. He asks all the difficult questions. He's always exchanging ideas or whatever. So when that finally became a thing for him, it makes absolute sense.
Yeah.
So now when he goes missing, it's like, oh, he's just getting votes.
He's out with his clipboard.
He's out with his clipboard canvassing for votes in like 4 years' time. But it's that for me is, like you do it with adults, obviously, in coaching, but I think coaching to kids as well, or education, understanding more about the coaching process. And maybe it's because the teachers themselves aren't being coached, so they don't get it, right? But then all of a sudden, everyone starts playing to their strengths. And I always say this, is that if everybody in the world was doing their purpose, there'd be no need to compete. There'd be no need for insecurity. Why? Because everyone knows what they're here for.
Yeah.
Everyone knows what they're doing. They're maximizing their gifts, skills, talents, abilities, whatever. They're maximizing that. So I don't need to know what Jimmy's doing. I'm interested because I want them to succeed rather than I'm competing with them. Because I look at it this way. I've got a brand marketing agency, but in Bristol there's, I don't know, a couple of hundred at least. So if I worried about the other 199, then I'd be worried, right?
Yeah.
But I don't. I just said, well, I'm focused on purpose and I'm going to double down on that. And we still do that. And I don't care what the others do. And if they want to go down the purpose route, great. There's 8 billion people out there. Do you know what I mean? And if Bristol's too crowded, I'll find some other clients from somewhere else, because I'm not letting that get in the way of purpose. You know, I believe I want to help people discover purpose and build a life around it, business being one of them. And that doesn't matter. It's like you, there's so many coaches out there, but your unique way of drawing it out of them, you know, posting them to the right place. You know, it's there, right? Everyone makes you different, and you found your tribe, you found your crowd, you found your way you're going to do it. And some people are going to absolutely love working with you that way. Then great. But I think it's when you're aligned and you know what you're doing, and like you've been on a journey to get there, climbed up trees and all this amazing stuff, coding, software, all these things. Furniture making, I mean, you've got a ready-made toolkit in a sense, just based on your experience alone, that can help many different people.
Exactly. And I think, you know, being like really struggling at school because I was dyslexic, like being able to just look around and see people who just weren't, and just kind of always being aware, like, I'm not bad at everything, but I'm really bad at this, and just kind of almost just wanting to be able to understand that. So I feel like for me, it starts at a very young age, where it's like, how come some people are really good at things, and you know, just trying to kind of identify that and kind of reflect myself off what that looked like, and then find my own version of that. Yeah, I think it's... The best
analogy I come up with is that in education is that we often spend a lot more time focusing on people's weaknesses rather than their strengths. So strengths aren't celebrated, so the weaknesses are. But my point is, if someone is 4'5", they are not going to be a high jumper. No matter what you do, the chances are they're going to run under that bar. So find out what they're good at, right? You know, find out they might be the best footballer because they're small, center of gravity, no one can tackle them. You know, they're super quick. Let them do that.
Yeah.
And I think that's what we're not asking early enough. Is like, right, yes, we change shape. Yes, we grow. Yes, we will this. But there are some things you will naturally see a child gifted with. And ultimately, it's like a plant. They're a seed. You know, there are seeds in that person. It's up to us as the adults to water those seeds and help them grow in their direction. But you know what, if they're a sunflower, let them be a sunflower. They're not going to be a rose. You know, that's just the way it is. And it's us to identify that that's the type of plant they actually are, and let's give them the right water to grow into what they're supposed to be, planted in the right soil. And we're asking that question when they're 18 or they're 14 when they're doing their options. It's too late. So we get people wandering around for a career for 10 years and then they pivot and they end up doing stuff like me. You know, I was doing it one way, 10 years in, I changed. You were doing it another way. And it's not to say we haven't made best use of those experiences, but wouldn't it have been easier if you knew a little bit earlier?
Totally. And I think education is missing a trick by not using that book, basically. I mean, like, I've gifted that book to so many teachers already, you know, and I'm kind of like, this is a really good strengths-based parenting, a really good book. Please use it. Because, you know, like, if that was the case, if that information was there, kind of pressed into the kids just through observation, you know, it's not difficult. I mean, some people are better at it than others to spot strengths in people, but it is a learnable thing, and I think it would really transform. So by the time you get to, like 14 or 16 or 18, when you're making big decisions about your life, you're already doing it from a basis of like understanding, I loved trees or whatever. And like, I don't know what that means. Maybe I should be a botanist. I don't know. But at least you've got some kind of sense of what that is. Whereas
I can tell you what that is. I think it's more that you enjoyed the view by the time you got up there.
I mean, it's true. I lived in London for a long time, but when I moved to Bristol, one of the things I really appreciated was the contours, like was being able to get some sense of perspective.
There you go.
And I think there is something huge about that, but that wasn't the only thing. I mean, being physical and kind of climbing the trees. I mean, I rock climbed for years after that because tree climbing wasn't cool when you're a teenager. so yeah, I think there was so many things.
But what I guess what I'm trying to get to is that you look at certain things where you have a natural leaning towards, and you could begin to unpick the type of career that, you know, you could share that. I love climbing trees or whatever. And then you go, well, how do I make that practical? And then you go, well, you know, there are aspects of tree climbing that you enjoy, this risk taking. It's to getting a different perspective on things. Ultimately, that's what you're coaching people on.
Yeah.
You know, so those things were inherently in you when you were younger, but no, what you need is a coach to see that.
Yeah, exactly. And it's really difficult to do it by yourself. I think a lot of us, we, you know, like, I'm all into journaling and there's so many tools that are helpful, but I actually needed that guy in my career to turn around and go, what you're doing with me right now is really valuable, because I wouldn't have seen it for myself. It would have probably taken me another 10 years, if at all. So I think, but in a way, he became my coach in that moment, where he was like, I see something that you're doing here that's really valuable, and here's the money. You know, it's like that. That's quite a lot of evidence there. You know?
Is.
And I feel like I'm doing that for my clients, not exclusively that, but there's a small amount of that in every session. Some people, they don't know what they're good at, so they need a lot of that. And some people are already founders of very successful businesses. They just need a little bit of reminding that, like, why are you spending 2 days doing the finances when that's not really what you're great at?
Yeah.
You know, actually, can we not like outsource that, or do something with it to be able to get you into the space where you want to be, or just, coaching people through, as their team grows and they're quite a shy person, and how do you actually influence, like some of these, they're kind of, they're getting to the edge of where their natural abilities already are, and they're trying to kind of sharpen and get past that point where they're actually meeting some other challenges.
Well, listen, it's been great. I know we could go for another hour. There's enough there to unpack, but thank you so much for coming on. Could you just remind the audience of where they could get in touch with you?
I'm on LinkedIn, James O'Halloran. I don't know if there's many others on there, but yeah. And my website is just James, JamesOhalloran.com. That or is, that's the Irish pronunciation. But anyway, it's, JamesOhalloran.com. That's where you can find me.
Brilliant. Well, it's been an absolute pleasure. Thank you for your time. And we'll definitely get you back.
Thank you very much. Good to be here. Cheers.
Hi, everybody. Thank you so much for listening to the Purpose People podcast. How you can help us is to like and subscribe our YouTube channel. You can also subscribe to our podcasts on Apple, Spotify, Google, and Amazon. That helps us get our message out there to help people go after their dreams, double down on it, and be successful in life on their terms.